Good morning. Thank you so much for joining. I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and then we'll start talking about kind of the journey with Intuiflow and Flogistix.
Sure. Yeah, Brent Mosley with Flogistix. We are a part of Flowco, which we'll see, you'll see here on the screen. We merged into one big company, went public. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. I've been with the company for a little bit over 2.5 years now. Been in supply chain for over 25.
Excellent. Yeah, so you've seen some things.
Yes, so I've seen some things. A lot of oil and gas, automotive, and medical even. So medical devices. So
yeah, really great. I know you've got a great background. So tell us a little bit about Flowco, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit more specifically about Flogistix. I know you guys have been on quite the journey with mergers and acquisitions in a very, very impressive sector.
Sure. Yeah. So Flogistix came about last January, or I'm sorry, Flowco came about last January. And what Flowco is a combination of multiple different business units that operate in different areas of the oil and gas field. So we have Estes. You can read in here. We have Estes, which is high pressure compression. We have Flowco Production Solutions, which their core competency is artificial lift. And you have Flogistix. We are in vapor recovery. And I think we'll talk a little bit in maybe another slide, but we just acquired another company called Valiant, and they're in the submersible pumps for the oil and gas field. So, yeah, so just a little bit about us. So instead of us just being one individual company working with your very large oil producers, we can go to them now with the package and provide them with an entire package of vapor recovery, compression, artificial lift, and so on.
Amazing. Yeah, and really going to be the dominator here. And then when you talk a little bit about, when you talk specifically about Flogistix, I think when I was trying to also better understand the industry and the business that you're in, I think can you talk a little bit about the flares? And that kind of resonated for me when you talk about the vapor recovery and the gas recovery with part of the equipment that Flogistix produces that maybe people would recognize.
Yeah, so one of the fun things about work is to talk about things that people see all the time. A lot of people don't understand, we're putting a hole in the ground, we're getting oil out, all that fun stuff. But there's actually a lot that goes into it. And one of the things with Flogistix, the very top thing is for vapor recovery. So whenever you're drilling a well and you have what is considered, maybe flash gas, so you could have methane, hexane, natural gas. A lot of these places you see out in the field, if you see this big flare, this big flame up above a smokestack or something, they're actually burning gas off that they don't really need or want. So essentially, if there's an oil well and there's natural gas in it, they're burning the natural gas off. What we're able to do is capture that vapor, eliminate that flare, and produce a revenue line for the company to sell that natural gas or methane or whatever else it is that is coming out of that well, besides what they're optimized to pull out. So if it's a natural gas well, you get other things, you get all kinds of stuff that comes out of the well whenever you drill. So so eliminating that flare is is a big thing for us. So, as a Flogistix guy, and I'm driving down the road and I see a flare, and I'm like, man, my sales guy needs to go talk to this guy out here to eliminate that flare.
Yeah, well, you just got to pull the truck in and just go knock on a door, Brent. Come on.
Yes.
All right. And then a little bit about, because this is also very exciting. I know this was kind of a recent expansion for you with Intuiflow usage, but talk a little bit about your footprint. I know you mentioned you've got 15 field offices, kind of support for the field. Talk a little bit more about kind of the size of Flogistix, if you don't mind.
Right. So with just in Flogistix itself, we have two manufacturing facilities. One facility is OEM manufacturing. Another facility is for what we call our ARC center, which is our advanced rebuild center. So if we have any units that go down in our fleet or any customer owned units, we have outlet to send our units there to be repaired. We can do a complete rebuild or just a fix in those two offices. And then we also have 15 field service offices around the United States. So domestically, we are in Mexico as well. But these 15 field service sites, to put this into perspective, 15 field service sites maintain a fleet of around 4,000 units that we have on rent. And then, we have 8,000 units here. These are units that, we have sold to customers. Customers can buy or rent from us. So, we have 8,000 units, and a lot of time they sign a service contract with us to maintain their unit or, oil changes, all that good stuff that comes with it. That's a big one, oil changes. If it's a gas drive, you have either your Caterpillar and Cummins engines that require maintenance as well on intervals. Ideally, we want our units to run 24/7.
Okay.
So you can think, you get a Cat or a Cummins engine running 24/7. At 1,800 RPMs, 2,000 RPMs. The oil needs to be changed in that thing. It has spark plugs. It has a life too that we have to maintain in a pretty harsh conditions.
Yeah, I love it. You're like the Jiffy Lube of the oil field on your service platform. I love that. Great. If you don't mind, can you talk us? So I know you're very, very proud of the capabilities within the Flogistix line and the Flowco lines. Talk a little bit about maybe just a couple here on some of the things you guys are actually able to do yourselves.
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things whenever when our CEO started the company, he wanted to say, we're going to do everything in-house. That's a core competency for us.
Awesome.
And as we found out, our core competency is pretty much everything. We have proprietary software. So we do all of our wiring harnesses, all of our box builds in-house. We have proprietary software that runs these units. These units communicate through cell phone. So I can look on my cell phone at a unit. I can tell how it's operating.
Wow.
What the temperature is, what the RPMs is, what PSI it's running at, what flow we're getting. And I can also tell, does the oil need to be changed? Is it shutting off, turning on before we go? So, when we roll a truck, we're not going to, downtown Oklahoma City. We're going, 3-4 hours away from anywhere down a dirt road to maintain these. So we're able to see what possibly could be wrong with the unit or what needs to be done. What do we need to take with us whenever we go out to these fields?
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. We have CNC plasma tables. Another thing that we have that's unique is we have a pipe profiler. There's not a whole lot of people that have pipe profilers. So what this will do is it will cut 3D beveled holes in our pipes for whenever we're welding. You can see, like in the fabrication shop, there's a flange sticking out of that big pipe right there in the middle. Yeah, that little gold looking piece there. There's a hole cut in that pipe, and that flange there's a neck on that flange, and we machine that flange so it creates the best fit for whenever you go to weld that to prevent leaks. And outsourcing that is very expensive on the pipe profiling. So that's one of the things we do that is unique to us as well. And we are a code vessel weld shop. So all of our welders, all our entire facility is a code weld shop. So all of our vessels are ASME certified, and we are UL listed. Back to the control panels, we are UL listed. We do have our own paint booths. We do our own paint. You can drive semis through our paint booth. You could paint an entire semi with a trailer. So we have very big paint booths that we do as well. We do everything from beginning to the end. We do our own testing and everything out. So whenever it leaves our building, it's ready to go on site to the customer.
Amazing stuff. And I have to imagine that when Landman came out, that all of a sudden, I'm sure everyone's kids at Flowco and Flogistix got a lot, thought that their parents were a lot cooler, right? That when dad's going out
Yes.
to a platform that, yeah, there you go. Very cool.
Yes.
And then for the folks on the phone, if you could talk a little bit about, so this is just kind of some screen grabs of some of the items that you put out into the fields or that you would sell to your customers. Can you give maybe just this top one on the left, just to give it some perspective? Can you talk a little bit about the footprint of one of these guys?
Yeah, so this one on the top is the base skid is 8 foot by 20 foot long.
Yep.
So kind of put in perspective of how big that is. It's a 300 horsepower unit. We make everything from a 7.5 horsepower to 300 in our standard packages. We do go up to 400 and 450 on special packages if it's required and the customer wants it. But our standard packages are anywhere from 7.5 to 300 horsepower is our bread and butter.
Amazing.
So
And then
these are all electric. These are all electric engines or electric motors. We do gas drives for all of these as well, not on the 7.5 horsepower, but for the 100, the 125, the 150, 200 and 300 horsepower. We have a gas drive option as well, which would be a natural gas driven engine instead of an electric motor.
Awesome. And then talk a little bit about the realities of overseeing the supply chain at Flogistix specifically. Can you mention how many SKUs? I was going to ask about the lead times to put one of those units together, kind of your customer lead time expectations. Maybe touch on that a little bit.
Right. A lot of our product, it says there we have 17,000 SKUs. So those are active SKUs. So you can imagine these big skids that we have. These big skids that we have one of our skids will have, thousands of part numbers. And when you're talking little T's and fittings and elbows and tubing and piping and, all the welding and all the raw material it takes to make these, there's a lot that goes into one of these units, and you could think again, 8 by 20 feet. There's a lot of space to fill up that area. We do have. This is the one place that I've worked that we've seen major lead time constraints, and this is one of the things that we had. In choosing Intuiflow is to help us, with our S&OP process. When I started, we didn't have an S&OP process at all. We've stood up an S&OP process. We have a 12-month rolling forecast. We're loading that into Intuiflow. We've updated our lead times. So we have standard lead times on some of our product is 50 plus weeks. So, and the customer wants things in, tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
We have to account for that, and we have to adjust and be able to react. And whenever I say they want it tomorrow, they understand we can't get it tomorrow. But it's not really something that they want to wait 20 weeks for. Whenever you have a 50 plus week lead time, everybody talks about, engines from Caterpillar and Cummins and other manufacturers. The struggle's real with those guys. I mean, they're some of their engines are out. They're saying 2029 on some engines. Luckily, we don't use those, but they do have specific engines for power generation and data centers that have that long lead time. So a way to help us optimize our inventory, we've chose Intuiflow to help us with that. Large BOMs, like it says, 1,500 items. So it's nothing to have over 1,000 items on an area. And then we have multiple locations. So one of the things we have done right is we use the same part number across our entire company of Flogistix. So if a valve in our production site is part number 123, the same valve is that part number in our field service sites. So we have the ability to transfer inventory within NetSuite, within Intuiflow, and create purchase orders in Intuiflow. And you can see multiple locations. You can see all these locations and what inventory they have, and make decisions right in Intuiflow, like, hey, I need to transfer this from my field service location to my production location, or field service to field service instead of purchasing. Really easy. And yes, planning on spreadsheets. We were talking about that earlier. I despise Excel. I try to get away from Excel and try to get my team away from Excel as much as I can. Um, and I will make the caveat for Intuiflow. They do have the capability to easily put information in Excel if you want to. So,
If you want to.
yeah,
If you
if you
want
want
to.
to. And the very last thing, buyer inconsistencies, right? I think you guys were talking about that with your previous person presenting. Um, Everybody has their own way of buying. There was
Yeah.
no real structure on how we did it. Everybody kind of managed their parts their own way, but now we have one single source of truth, and we use Intuiflow for that. NetSuite is the system of record, but Intuiflow reads that record. So
Yeah,
no Excel spreadsheets to maintain different lead times or anything.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah. Please finish your thought there.
yeah, no, so I was just going on to the priorities here. So
And I just to clarify for the group here, so yeah, we do have two kind of product channels, if you will. So we do have a native NetSuite solution, which is what Brent is using at Flogistix and Flowco, and then Philip on from McElroy just a little bit ago. So they're using our cloud solution. So depending upon your ERP, our cloud solution is ERP agnostic, but if you do happen to be a NetSuite user and are looking for some extra horsepower of functionality within NetSuite, that's where our native solution can definitely be a good help. So awesome, Brent. And then talk a little bit about when you were looking around. I know it was a competitive situation. You were looking at us as well as a handful of others. Maybe mention a little bit about the priorities and what you were looking for when you were shopping.
okay, yeah. One of the things that everybody in my role is, I need information available. I prefer to have information available to me without having to ask for it, to get visibility um, of where we stand, shortages, what's priority, what is it that we need to order, um, and how do I optimize my inventory without running out of inventory. A lot of companies go in and say, we're going to take out all safety stocks. We're going to take extreme measures to reduce inventory.
Yeah,
That was not our plan. That was not our way to go, because as soon as you do that, everything's short. So with the implementation of Intuiflow, it helps us to optimize our inventory in a way. I was talking earlier specifically, there's not an easy way in NetSuite to see what inventory you can see what inventory other locations have, but you can't see what their status is, if it's something that they need, something that they don't need, something that they use, something that they don't use.
yeah,
With using the average daily usage or a mixed model for for a forecast and an average daily, there's multiple options you can use with Intuiflow. So you have the choice. I can look back the past 120 days, 300 days, whatever you want to look at, and you can see it tells you your average daily consumption, and then it will calculate essentially a safety stock, which is what Intuiflow calls it, a buffer stock, and I like that word better. And it gives you like a red, yellow, green um, uh, color on where you are. It tells you need to order it, tells you need to get rid of it. If it's an item you need to get rid of, it's easy to go and look at an item that you have too much of, and if you're not using it very much, one of the things you can do is look at all your other locations and see if they're in a lot of cases, you find out that they're buying the same inventory that you have,
sure.
a year's supply of inventory on. You can easily see that. And you can, it improves your responsiveness, because you're able to see that immediately and make that happen. So,
Yeah, and exactly. In both platforms, you do have that ability because we are item revision location specific. Revisions, if you use them, it's nice, like Brett was describing, if you've got a shared item across multiple facilities or locations, or Brent's example, right? There might be field service where, because of the weather, they are consuming this valve faster than where the weather is different. So all sorts of different consumption rates might be very, very different, or forecasted consumption rates might be very, very different. And then a little bit back on that kind of that competitive environment. So talk a little bit about, why we were able to win your business.
yeah. So one of the main things that really was beneficial to us. We're a pretty small company in the whole scheme of things, and we don't have IT. We have IT, right? And I only have a few people on my team. So the resources it would take, I've been parts of implementations before to where I've had to have IT involved. There's cost involved with IT. We have NetSuite. Intuiflow runs a native NetSuite program. So I actually log into NetSuite to see Intuiflow. And all of the information DD Tech or Intuiflow has been able to pull all that information and provide that information to us without having to go. We had to go through the IT thing of NDAs and giving them logins and things like that to access our data for startup. But the efficiency in which that Intuiflow can have this up and running is just mind blowing. I've been parts of projects where we worked for a year and a half on a project, and we still struggled with data and reliability and refresh rate. And with Intuiflow, once it's connected, you add a new part number, you connect that new part number in Intuiflow, you change lead times, you do anything like that, it automatically updates in Intuiflow. You create a PO, the PO shows up. You do a transfer order, the transfer order shows up. You receive a part in, it shows up. You don't have to wait till tomorrow for the information to be there. And the simulation as well. So they're able to provide a simulation if you have NetSuite, and I'm sure they can with other ERP systems in their third-party software that's offline. But you can give them some flat files, which is relatively easy, out of your ERP system, and they will create a results page, really, or a data page for you, and say, you need to look at this data, or you need to look at these parts and see if it makes sense to you. A lot of things that we thought we were really good at maintaining our data. One thing that you need to look at whenever you do this is Intuiflow will work with you on maintaining, not on maintaining the data, but they will give you a list of items to, like, hey, today look at these items and see if it makes sense to you. Is the lead time right? Is the demand right? Something doesn't look right, based on our experience of other ERP systems and companies that we've implemented. And it's quick, right? So I mean, I think we maybe have a timeline slide in here somewhere, but the timeline, I mean, here we go. We started the discussions February, March. We reached out in April, signed everything off, started in June, and we went live in December. So 6 months.
It is amazing. Yeah. And really, really excited about all the growth. And Brent, just for time here, I'm going to skip forward just a couple, but why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the service level experience, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about your inventory experience, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the group.
Yeah, you can see here our service levels, in November and December, we're down in the, and if you went further back, it would even be lower. As we were implementing, I mean, that 67 was probably a good month if you start going back past in October and September, back in the earlier times. But you can see consistently our service level has increased to 98%. And I will say, the one thing, well, we're going to talk about inventory, but we didn't do this because inventory went up. Our inventory actually went down $5 million in 7 months. So to have your service level go up and your inventory go down $5 million, and we are operating, with very few shortages on a day-to-day basis. I remember going into production meetings, and the shortage list was, one Excel page long, right? You could print out an Excel sheet, and you're going down through that list. I can tell you now, with Intuiflow and our S&OP that we've stood up, that list is never more than 4 to 5 items on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I know Philip said something very similar. And I love hearing, when I get to the opportunity to talk to customers like yourself, and that is the best answer we could ever ask for. Inventory either declines or is aligned with the growth, like Philip and yourself are going through. And then you're also not having to run around and chase shortages. And then if you can for the group here, and then I'll see if there's any questions for Brent. So if you've got a question, please feel free to throw those in the Q&A box. But maybe tell us a little bit about anything you would share, right? So we're having a cup of coffee, someone's about to go on this journey. You mentioned a little bit about the data. What else would you share with the group?
Yeah. So, with the help that Intuiflow provides, and I think you put it on the other slide, I kind of skipped over it, but we met for 1 hour twice a week. It's not like we didn't hold ourselves up in an office with Intuiflow for weeks or months to do this. We would have a call twice a week for 1 hour. We would go away with action items, right, on both sides. Because there's some things we didn't understand, and we operated a different way than Intuiflow maybe understood that we operated. So Intuiflow can make adjustments. We made adjustments. We validated the data. And again, a very small team. I have two people on my team and myself that implemented this in 6 months. So, if you have a team of 20 or it's not something that, and we had 17,000 part numbers, and we probably touched almost all 17,000 part numbers. There's competing projects, right? I mean, you're still trying to run a plant, run a shop, keep up with all of your other duties and parts and obligations that you have. It's not something that we felt was a burden. I don't want to call it a burden, but I know a lot of people think, oh, if I'm going to go do this, it's going to take forever. They're not going to listen to me. But we didn't have that issue. We started out, we had the executive leadership representation. They said, let's do this. And if you need help from us, let us know. So the team buy-in, that was a big thing. So just a little bit about us. Like I said, last January, Flowco Holdings announced our first, well, not our first, but our only, I hope, IPO back in January 2025. So we merged before the IPO with Flowco Production Solutions, Flogistix, and Estes. We merged back in October of 2024, went public January 2025. This year, we acquired Valiant as part of an acquisition just a couple of months ago. We added the 13 field service locations to Intuiflow this year, and they're using it as well. And we are reviewing additional, we have multiple production facilities. I mean, Flogistix is the one that chose to go down this path before we went public. But we are working with other locations to implement this because everybody is converting to NetSuite in Flowco.
Yeah, I love it. And Brent, really, really amazing journey, and excited to see all the continued success with Flogistix. We'll give folks just a minute here to see if you've got any questions for Brent. And like Brent described, so I think very early on when Brent was shopping, the other thing I think that was attractive is that the ability to scale and grow. That at some point, he needs additional functionality potentially in the cloud solution, but we think we've got a very well-rounded supply chain solution depending upon the need. And I think I would add, right, I think you've heard both from Philip at McElroy and then Brent from Flogistix, lot of complexity with what they're dealing with on a daily basis. And I think a good reoccurring theme here, and hopefully for those of you that are customers on the phone, right, that hopefully your lives and your team's lives are getting easier, really focusing on prioritization and identifying areas that need your attention or your team's attention where appropriate. Okay, so I know I messed this up last time. I don't see any questions for Brent.
Yeah,
Yep.
I can shout them out, Wally. So just, I think it's more of a general question, but can Intuiflow tackle any industry, process, discrete, manufacturing, retail, other?
Yeah, that's a great question, Samperio. I appreciate that. It's situational, and that's part of why we offer the simulation results. I think in retail, high fashion, where you're going to buy and go out and produce this style of summer 2026, buy containers of it to support that sale, and then you're never going to run it again. We would definitely want to explore that with you and see where we could help and what might be able to help you there. But for what Brent and Philip have been describing, absolutely, in discrete manufacturing, process manufacturing, food and bev, industrial equipment, all sorts of good stuff. So appreciate the question.
And also any benefits in having this system when acquiring or evaluating new acquisitions?
I mean, I think Brent would speak to that very well. I know that he and I have been into discussions as Flowco continues to go out on the M&A path, and I think it's attractive because you could potentially standardize your planning processes and your supply chain processes across multiple different business units. Just like how Brent has, Flowco has very different business units that are doing different things, some heavy machining, machine shop environments versus some paint environments. And I think he's been able to see some good success with us standardizing some of that planning like he described.
Yeah, I think one of the things also, Wally, is that if you here's my thought on it. We didn't do this
Sure.
route because everybody was already down the path of we've always, we've had NetSuite for years and years, and everybody understood that, they purchased off of NetSuite and different things like that. You can actually, if you implement Intuiflow, you do not have to run MRP in your system. Intuiflow will do that for you. So there's benefits there from a costing standpoint. If you're looking at doing this, we still do run MRP because that's what we did. But one of the things that we're looking at as we acquire new businesses and implement NetSuite, let's implement Intuiflow to start with, and let's not even use MRP. So I don't know if that ever gets talked about, but that is one thing that that Wally and I and the Intuiflow team have talked about in depth a lot.